here. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started at 7 p.m. We have a lot of participants joining us tonight, so we just started the webinar a little bit early. But sit back, relax, get a cup of water, a glass of wine, anything. This will be a fun 30 minutes. We'll get started in just another minute. Thank you for your patience. We have a lot of attendees joining us tonight. Good evening.
We can begin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yu-Ling Chang. I am the ambassador for Kidsburg.org, as well as the co-producer for Remake Learning Days across America. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the webinar series, So Now What? Helping Parents and Caregivers Navigate a School Year Like No Other. This series is put together in partnership with Remake Learning Days across America, the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, and Remake Learning, and a couple national partners as hosts. Before we get started with tonight's webinar, I'd love to just share a little bit about this series. It is every Wednesday night in September. And on the next slide, you can see that tonight we are here talking about Ready to Partner, 5 steps for a different kind of school year for families and schools. But next Wednesday, we have another webinar with Common Sense Media about how to be safe online and how to balance that tech usage, especially since a lot of us are working in a world of virtual learning. And then the last Wednesday in September, we will share learning resources for families, and we'll span all the grade levels from K through 12. We did have 3 other webinars already, and they're all posted on the YouTube channel at Remake Learning Days across America, as well as on Kidsburg.org. So if you miss any of them, you are welcome to head over there and see them. So tonight, we are lucky to have Learning Heroes join us. They are a known nonprofit internationally and nationally for their work in engaging families and supporting them so that their children have the best experience in school. I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight. Bringing 20 years of experience in family engagement, education, and philanthropy, Wendy Lopez is the Vice President of Content and Partnerships at Learning Heroes. She comes to Learning Heroes from American Express, where she worked on the nonprofit leadership development philanthropic platform. Previously, Wendy was with Scholastic for nearly a decade, helping to develop family and community engagement initiatives. And she has been a guest lecturer at NYU and at the University of the South in collaboration with the Yale Child Study Center. And she is a proud mama of 2 young daughters. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all the parents joining. For many of you, it might be week 1, like it is for me for school. I have 2 young ones. For many of you, it might be week 3. And this really is a year like no other. I'm hoping to tonight share some tips, some free resources, and hopefully just give you a moment to take a deep breath, which is how I would love to begin, and acknowledge that you are your child's learning hero. We truly believe that all parents are the experts of their children, and we simply want to bring information and practical resources to you that are all informed by the research that we do across the country, listening to parents first and foremost to listen to their needs and their priorities. So before I kick off with some tips and back to school resources, would love for you to just, again, take a deep breath and think for a moment, starting on a positive foot, what is one thing that you feel really proud of so far this school year? It might be that you, like me on Sunday night, navigated the 7 emails, literally 7 emails, with different kinds of login information for the different platforms, or that you got your kids to, bed on time and up and ready for whether it was hybrid or virtual. Just one thing that you feel really good about. And tonight is really about building on that. So at Learning Heroes, our mission is to support and equip parents as their child learning heroes. We develop free and actionable resources. And one way that we do that is by giving parents key actions and resources to navigate specific times of school year. So right now it's back to school, and our theme this year is really all about partnership. So this is a year like no other. It is not easy for parents. It's also not easy for teachers. I'm a former educator. My mom is a teacher. This is all new for them too. And so this is truly it's going to take a village moment. And so all of our tips and resources really lead back to that, so that we can maximize our roles, both as parents and as teachers. We know we've heard from parents across the country that you are not teachers, and you didn't sign up to be. You might not even feel that you're ready to be sort of a facilitator of learning, but what we can be is champions of learning, cheerleaders. We can also provide parents with, or teachers with, all of that we know about our child. And so that I want to kick us off into the tips. So the first one is really about remembering that given all the change, our voice as parents is needed more than ever. And there's so much that we can add to the conversations at our schools and our teachers in a positive way. So for example, right at the beginning of the year, letting your teacher know the best way to communicate with you. If you are not at a desk on email all day, letting your child's teacher know if you need that text or that phone call to let you know about any changes or any important information. Also sharing ideas. I think at this moment schools are probably feeling overwhelmed, and so not that we need to be emailing our teachers or our leaders every day, and certainly not knocking on the door complaining, but in a constructive way, offering any ideas. If something really isn't working for you, and you see that it's not working for other parents with these models, suggesting ways that it might be easier. For example, the streamlining of emails. I think that's one message that schools, while they're figuring things out, is one to share. So really knowing that our voice is needed, again, through a productive and positive lens. The second tip is all around really taking a moment to see, and there are different ways that we can do this, to see how our child is starting the school year. In our national survey over the past 5 years, we have been tracking a pretty startling data point. And so I won't bog you down with research tonight, but I do want to share that. It is that 90% of us as parents, 90%, believe our child is at or above grade level, when unfortunately the national and state data shows that it's closer to just over a third of our students at grade level. And so we really believe that in order for parents to maximize our roles and to be the best advocates for our children, that it's important for us to know where our child is doing well and where they need support. So we have created something called the readiness check. And it's like a game for your child. They answer 3 to 5 questions in reading and math. And then we get to see how they have learned important foundational skills from last year that are important for them to learn new skills this year. So for example, if your child is a rising third grader, you would actually have them take the second grade short quiz to see how they've learned those skills. And it's important for us to know, like, if they got all of those second grade questions wrong, that could be a flag that they still needs to review some of those foundational skills. The best part of the tool is that at the end, we connect you to really highly curated, skill-specific videos, activities, and more to help you reinforce those skills at home. The tool is in English and Spanish. It was built to support ELL learners, and it can be used on your phone. So I'd love to take a quick look at a video that our friends at WNET and PBS created for us on the readiness check. It highlights a mom and a son from New York using the readiness check. Hopefully the technology will go. All right. Oh,
Hey, Wendy, I
so
don't think the sound on the video played. So for the next video, we might want to check the sound.
you couldn't hear it?
No, we couldn't.
Oh no.
That's okay. I can post the link in the chat box.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Well, that one had captions. So, okay, sorry about that. So basically, that was a mom and a son using the readiness check, and as you can see, it shows you answer the 3 to 5 questions, then they get connected to resources. The video was shot pre-COVID, so at the end you see the parent and the teacher having a conversation about how the child did. And so even though we can't be that close without masks, there is a feature at the end of the tool where you can email the results to your teacher or to yourself. So it still can be a great tool to share with your child's teacher as a way to help them see how your child has progressed with these key skills. So again, a really great back to school tool that you can use at home with your child and gives you something to share with your child's teacher to give them a sense, which leads me to the third tip, which is all about, again, the importance of partnering with teachers and really specifically to create a plan. So given all of the time that we as parents spent with our children over in the spring and all over the past few months, we've seen now how our child is doing, right? We've seen how they respond to virtual learning, what motivates them, what doesn't, what's working in terms of these hybrid models or virtual models. And so it's really important that we be proactive in sharing that information with teachers. So we have created an interactive tool. Again, this is all at bealearninghero.org. Each of these tips that I've been going through have a specific resource that helps you with that tip. And for this one, it's a really simple tool. You can take the readiness check as a first step and share that information with the child's teacher. And then it allows you some space for you to just type some notes. What are your child's strengths? What are some areas they need help with? It also prompts you with any ideas around, the social and emotional aspect. Again, like what interests your child? What gets them excited about learning? And then it also gives you some really great questions to ask the teacher, such as, how is the school going to know how your child has progressed? Most schools do at the beginning of a year something called a diagnostic test or beginning of year benchmark test. I know these are very education jargony words, but simply put, it's a short assessment at the beginning of the year to help guide instruction, to help teachers teach your child. Oftentimes that data is not shared with parents because it's seen as something that is, mostly for teachers. It's low stakes. It's not like it goes on your child's record. It's really meant to inform instruction. But this is something that we as parents, I think, especially in this context, we can ask. We can ask, how are you going to, how my child is progressing? Is that something you can share with me? That way, you know how your child is starting the year. Another thing we prompt you to do with this plan is, to ask your child's teacher, what are, 1 to 3 things that I can do to support these very specific skills this year? What's expected of my child, and how can I support them at home? Really honing in on, again, maybe 1 to 3 things. Sal Khan from Khan Academy had a really great article out a couple of weeks ago, and his call to action to parents was, this is a year for us to do less. And what did he mean by that? Less is more. If we do it in what that means is that it allows us to go deeper in a more meaningful way, focusing on core skills rather than feeling overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, I'm working from home. I've, 2 or 3 kids. How am I going to teach the entire curriculum or facilitate that learning for that curriculum? Instead, if we get a solid sense of what are the 3 main skills my child needs to learn by the end of the year in reading and writing, which we know is so foundational for other subjects, and how can I help at home? That keeps us focused, right? That keeps us focused so that on a day when our kid may not want to get on Zoom, we at least have, a couple of strategies that we can do, focus on those key skills, and we're not left sort of scrambling. So really encourage you to check out, again, it's bealearninghero.org. That's an interactive tool that you can use. And even if you don't use the feature on the website, just taking some ideas from it. Again, questions, we have a lot of questions, example questions. I just highlighted a couple of them, but there are other questions you can ask your child's teacher, depending on, your child's situation. The next and 4th tip that I'd love to cover is really about the social and emotional aspect. So we have seen in our research, and I know I feel this as a mom of a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, that when we surveyed parents across the country in the spring, the top concern for parents was the loss of social interaction of their children with their peers, with their teachers. And we know that the brain science shows that social, emotional, and academic skills are interconnected. Learning is relational, right? Our children need to feel connected to the learning, connected to our teachers, connected to each other in order to really experience learning and for it to come alive. So it's really important that we now more than ever, even though we have a lot on our plate, that we take a couple of minutes each day to check in with our children, to ask them how they're feeling, to ask them meaningful questions that get them to express how they're feeling. So for example, trying to avoid what we call yes, no questions. Instead of asking, how was your day? Good, bad, or, did you, have a good time at school today? Yes, no. Digging a little deeper. So, one thing if not at the end of the day, we'll start the day, I ask my daughter, what was one thing that you really liked about virtual learning today? And what was one thing that you didn't really like, or that didn't really get you excited? And then I ask her to, really break that down in her own words. And then I always try to switch up the 3rd question. I try to do sort of 3 questions. What's something that you're excited about tomorrow? Or what's something you think your teacher will introduce to you tomorrow? Getting her excited for that next day to keep her motivated. On our site, as I mentioned, for each of these tips, we have some great resources. So we have a great video also that we did with WNET, a Parenting Minute video. We have several around expressing emotions. And so we know, especially for many of our young kids, sometimes they don't have the words to label how they are feeling. So it's important that we communicate to our children that all feelings are okay right now. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to miss our friends in person. It's okay to maybe feel frustrated or confused by why we have to do all of this on, in front of a computer all of a sudden. So asking our children how they are feeling and giving them different ways to express that. And so in the next video that I was going to show, and maybe we can just show it even if the sound doesn't work again, because of the caption, is it's a mom and a daughter using a picture book to help sort of guide conversation about emotions. And sometimes that's a good strategy too, because it sort of removes the pressure from the child and gives the example of the character in the book, and allows you to help your child sort of talk about feelings, make comparisons, which we know is so important in those early years. So I'm going to take a stab at this. Bear with me here. Are you all hearing that?
No, we can't hear anything.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Can you bear with me 1 second? Yeah, I clicked
You want to
everything.
try
Yeah,
sharing with the computer audio?
computer sound. Yeah, that's what
Thank you.
yeah, that's what it is clicked. I don't know why. All right, I'm gonna try that again. Hold on a second. There, it is checked off. Are you hearing that?
No, I don't know. I'm so sorry. I
All
know it
right.
worked when we just tested
I
it
know we just
before we
tested it.
started.
I am really sorry, and both of those boxes are checked. So I'm sorry, guys. It's a lovely video, and there's a whole series of Parenting Minute videos by WNET. We did several with them on life skills. They have others on healthy eating, on on schedules, and sort of all kinds of different life skills. So really encourage you to check those out. We do connect them from our website via Learning Hero. And apologies, we tested that. So moving along, so I want to make sure we get a chance for any questions. The last tip is really all about the parent, right? So those previous four tips were more about what we can do to keep our kids learning and get a solid understanding of grade level expectations and partnering with the teacher. But this one is really about us, right? Taking a moment to remember all that we are doing. That's why I started with that reflection moment, and like in this moment of feeling overwhelmed, just staying grounded in the good that we're doing, and the small, celebrating those small successes. So we sometimes at dinner, we'll give each other a high five if everybody got to where they needed to be on Zooms at the right time. If my 3-year-old didn't have any major meltdowns, that's success for us right now. And celebrating that as a family, keeping the spirit high, not being afraid to have those honest conversations about how we're feeling, and role modeling how we're problem solving, but really taking a moment to celebrate us as parents, taking a moment to do the things that make us happy and keep us motivated. So for me, that sometimes is taking a quick run. I haven't done that lately, but I'm going to get it back on my to-do list, or doing even a 15 minutes of yoga, just sort of centering myself in keeping myself motivated, basically. The other thing that I think is important at this time to take care of ourselves as parents is not being shy to tap into our parent networks. So for me, I know I just moved to a new community a year ago. I don't know a lot of people. My daughter is new to the public school, so what a year to be starting public school and not know anybody. I'm not a big social media person, so I'm not like big on the parent groups, but I am pushing my my comfort zone, and I'm trying to join parent groups and starting to, join conversations, sharing. I'm trying to share resources while also asking parents. Like, don't know a lot about the community resources yet. And I think this is, as I mentioned earlier, it's truly, it'll take a village. And so, not being vulnerable, and when to ask for help, and just looking for those opportunities to connect with others. I think that's something that is really helpful for us to be role modeling too for our children, and staying grounded in that this really is a very different kind of time. The other thing, lastly, is in terms of celebrating us as learning heroes, is that if there are probably going to be those days where a child, if you are in a virtual setting or a hybrid setting, might not be feeling motivated. Just remembering that learning is everywhere, right? Learning comes alive when we make it real. So if your child, does not want to participate in that Zoom, having a plan B. For example, my daughter loves playing cards with us right now. She's really into that, makes her feel like a big girl. So I'm trying to, Google all the kinds of math games that you can do with cards. She's really into planets. So we're learning and we're looking up online and we're reading books about planets. She's got a funny, quirky sense of humor. So I just ordered her some, like, literally, $4 joke books on Amazon, kid joke books. And it helps us all sort of, take a deep breath and have a chuckle at these silly jokes. But she's reading. And that's learning. And that's an example of the age where she is. But finding those everyday moments to make learning come to life for you and your family, I think, is really critical. And it's something that we as parents can uniquely do because we know what interests our child and what makes them tick. So with that, I think we have about 5 minutes for questions. The last thing I also really I'm excited to share, we are honored at Learning Heroes to tomorrow be hosting a big town hall with PBS and with Khan Academy. Sal Khan from Khan Academy will be featured. He'll be answering real live questions. We have some other great experts from PBS to share. We'll have several different segments. So really encourage you to check that out. It's at 5:30 p.m. tomorrow. And maybe we can enter this URL into the chat box as well.
Absolutely. We can definitely do that. Billy and Bart, if I could ask you for help on that. So Wendy, thank you so much for that presentation. And I'm sorry to everyone for the videos. I will make sure to send out the links to you via email so that you can watch them. They're both great. I've watched them as well. Wendy, a question for you about the readiness check. So the one that's on the Be a Learning Hero, it's for grades 1 through 8. Is that correct?
So it's for grades K through 8.
K through 8.
Yeah. And so thank you for asking that, because it's a really important question. So remember, it's about seeing how your child has learned key skills from last year that are important to learn new ones. So it's K8, which means that, if you have a rising 9th or 10th grader, they can take, and they should take, that end of year 8th grade to see how they have learned important skills for 9th grade. And so I always like to highlight that, because K8, you think, okay, my child's in 9th or 10th grade. But we are particularly, focused on those transition moments, like, from middle school to high school. It's especially important to really know, what our child needs to maybe refresh or review in order to learn new skills. So yeah, that's a great question.
And on that note, are there any resources you can share for high schoolers, especially as they get a little bit older? I know someone in the chat box, and you mentioned Khan Academy has some great resources there.
Yeah, Khan Academy has some great resources. National Geographic has some great resources. We actually have an entire curated list of resources. If we have a moment, I can actually probably share that from our website, that is by grades, including high school. We also have some great resources. We know from our research that parents are Also during the high school years, thinking about college. So we have and that college financing is always top of mind for parents. So we have some great resources about that as well.
That's great. I definitely, post-secondary school can feel a
Hmm.
little scary to parents.
Yes.
So another question, we were struck by what you shared on the research that 90% of parents believe their kids are at grade level, but in reality, it's really 33% of students who are performing at grade level. Could you share a little bit about that research and just sort of
Yeah.
why that disparity, and what can we do as parents to be more in tune as to where our children are?
Yeah, really great question. So when we dug into that, we wanted to really get at the heart of it. What we saw is that a lot of it comes down to grades. So parents believe that grades, and the majority of parents report that their childs are getting A's and B's. They believe that those A's, B's, and even C's mean that their child are on grade level, when the majority of teachers that we surveyed and spoke to were very quick to say that, in fact, grades are often as much effort, if not more so effort, than even mastery. And in fact, the vast majority of teachers say that parents rely too much on grades alone. So to us, this seems like a solvable issue. Like it's a matter of just understanding what those grades mean, and it's no one's fault, right? Like parents were getting grades, and that's our go-to. Um, but it's important for us to know that that's not the whole picture. There are lots of different measures that can give us that full and more accurate picture. So for example, that's why we created the readiness check. It's not an end all be all assessment, but it is meant to give you a little bit of a gut check. We worked with leading experts in math and reading to create it, to really focus in on those 3 to 5 skills. There are also, as I mentioned, schools take different diagnostics tests at the beginning of the year, and what they call formative assessments throughout the year. Sometimes that doesn't trickle down to parents. We can ask, and that can give us really helpful information, so that we're not getting to springtime and saying, why didn't I know my child was 2 grades below? The last measure that I want to also mention is our own observation, right? Like if your child is struggling and with homework, for example, that could be a flag, because homework is supposed to be a review of what's learned in the classroom. And homework is really intended to be something that a child can do on their own. So I think leaning into not being afraid to sort of trust our gut. And if we see our child struggling, to ask for help, to reach out to the teacher, and not be shy about it.
That's great. That is all great advice. A couple more questions. So one is, what types of resources do you have for special education?
Yeah, great question. So understood.org is a really great resource. There are also a lot of great resources at the state level. And so this is where, I'll be honest, we don't, focus specifically on special needs, but there are a lot of great resources at state and local levels on websites. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of digging. But I think this is a moment, especially during these models, is to be an advocate for your child. So if your child has an IEP and is supposed to be getting different kinds of services and modifications, to not be afraid to be vocal, to make sure that your child's needs are being met, and to also ask schools to connect you with other resources in the community that might be able to complement and help.
That's great. Thank you. Another question from an attendee tonight. I know I struggle with this a little bit. So how do you keep, or suggestions, do you have suggestions as to how to keep your child engaged? If this is a young child, 6 years old, with her lessons, especially when they view you as mom and not necessarily as a teacher. I mean, I think we all have that moment.
I am living that. My child is 6 and very strong-willed, and she is a different child with teachers. So I'm trying a couple of different strategies. one is to, and I'll be honest, I wasn't before a big believer in sort of extrinsic motivation, but I am trying a little bit of a reward system, where we put on a whiteboard sort of and celebrate, in a positive way, a star for completing, her morning meeting and her, her Zooms, and her, away, the sort of, for her, they do different, center time and away from the computer, and giving her small rewards. So my daughter's into chocolate, like little pieces of Hershey make her really happy. And it's more about the celebration. We have a little routine that, like, at the end of, 5 stars in a day, we do like a high five and, a huge hug. So trying to give her motivation for her that works, because it's like visual, it's on the board. The other thing I'm trying to, and I think is, best practice, during this time, is to really try and create a space for your child, even if it's not big. So for me, it's, it's a small desk. She's actually sharing my office with her right now, because I kind of want to keep an eye on what's going on. But it is, I have the calendar. She's got all of her supplies. Trying to, as much as possible, mimic, a little bit of school routine, and an environment to keep them focused. The last thing I'll just say is, and this is a very jargony word, is, on our website, we have some great resources on, motivation and, for example, using language that promotes a growth mindset. And kids really thrive on wanting to the process of learning if we encourage them to. So instead of saying, things like, wow, you're really smart, you did that, saying, you worked really hard on that. My daughter's having some challenges with some vowel sounds, and she has to work hard at it. And I'm celebrating that, like, wow, you worked really hard. You couldn't write that yesterday, and now you can. So helping them see the process of learning, in a way that, keeps them motivated.
So important, right? I mean, that is hard work at a young age. I
Mhm.
think Fred Rogers was the one who said, play is hard work for young kids. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much, Wendy. This was really important. I think as a parent, I used to be
Mhm.
very shy about reaching out to teachers. I always thought, like, teachers will reach out to me if there's a problem. Otherwise, I shouldn't bother them. And this has really made me think twice about that
Yeah,
you really want to,
especially this year.
especially this year. That is so
Yeah.
true. And we'd like to say thank you to all of our attendees for joining us tonight. If I may, I would just like to take 1 minute and ask you to put in the chat box learning resources that you would like to learn more about. What types of learning resources? As we prepare for our last session at the end of the month, we plan to share learning resources, but we also want to make sure that we're sharing learning resources that are meaningful to you. So if you have ideas, please put them in there, or if you have questions about learning resources, we would appreciate it. Again, next week, we'll be back with Common Sense Media on tech safety and balance. And thank you, Wendy, again for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you. Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Great. How to prep students for SAT, resources for non-English speakers. That's great. And yes, we will post the YouTube link to past webinars. I can do that, and I can send that out via email. How to help your children be able to do work on their own. I hear you loud and clear on that one. And non-screen resources. Great, I'm just going to